The Gospel Coalition is a group of mostly pastors who are deeply committed to the gospel as presented in the Bible and want to think out of the framework of the good news of Christ, crucified, risen on our behalf, reconciling us to God, preparing us for eternity. A group of men who are so committed to this good news that they want to think of all of their ministry and all of their outreach and all of their relationships and all of their priorities out of the centrality of the gospel as presented in the Word of God. And as a coalition, then, we aim not only to encourage ourselves and to sharpen ourselves to become more accurate and mutually edifying, but also then by the materials that we ourselves have gleaned and have gathered and so on, to set up a kind of encouraging center through conferences, through the website, through publications, whether digital or otherwise, a resource center, as it were, for other people who want exactly the same kind of thing in their own churches and ministries. The calling together of the Gospel Coalition was out of this shared concern of about 50 pastors from across a variety of denominations and backgrounds. This shared concern that this biblical gospel needs to be elevated. It needs to be the center out of which we think about everything. It needs to be the passion of our lives. Even our name is a hint in that direction. It's the Gospel Coalition. So it's a coalition that is of men from different denominations, from different ethnic backgrounds, from different parts of the country, different ages. What unites us, however, is the Word of God, which enables us to articulate, to preach, to live out the gospel. So it's a coalition, first of all, of pastors and churches who want to see the gospel so central in all of what they do, in their preaching, in their teaching, in their discipling, whether they're ministering in Manhattan or in the Pacific Northwest, or in a poor community in a small rural town somewhere, or on a university campus, whatever. So articulate the gospel that when they think about how to do ministry, or when they think about what and how to preach, or when they think about service to the poor, or when they think about mission overseas, or whatever, they're thinking out of the most central things of the Word of God all the time, starting from the center to work things out. And that's what we're trying to do. And as we work these things out ourselves and encourage one another in our faith and learn to pray for one another and so forth, so we are increasingly trying to produce materials that help others do the same thing and that nurture people on the Word of God, that enable people to see how the gospel at the center transforms all of life and vision and ministry and everything else, so that increasingly people will say, yes, that's the kind of thing I believe. Yes, that's what the gospel is. Yes, that's the kind of church I would like to be. What we're claiming is that evangelicalism at its best is nothing other than biblically faithful Christianity at its best. In other words, I don't think that evangelicalism should be defined, first of all, as a social group or an historical stream of people, although it is both of those things. Evangelicalism at its best is faithfulness to the evangel as taught in the Word of God. And thus, evangelicalism at its best, and God knows there are lots and lots of failures and it's not always at its best, but at its best, it is merely the attempt to be the most faithful that we can possibly be to the evangel as it is heralded by Christ, secured by Christ, guaranteed by Christ, proclaimed by Christ and His apostles. And we're merely an organization, a coalition that is trying to promote that sort of vision, not only for ourselves and in our own churches, but in the broader culture.